What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith, joined in studio by Robbie the Fire Bernstein. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Mr. Smith?
Very good. I can't complain. You once again are a human being with a car.
Yes.
You fell down to my level for a minute there, but you're right back to being normal. So how does that feel?
I like the car. This is the first time I'm being hooked by capitalism because I got a pretty nice car. And now I actually want a really nice car.
Oh, that's all it took?
Like, I've never bought something and been like, wow, I like this so much. Can we do better with this? Usually I'm like, this does nothing for me. But I like this car.
Dude, last time I was in Austin, Rogan showed me this new car he just bought.
Right.
Like this, I forget what it was. Just this beautiful, like 1960 something sports car. It's like the coolest freaking thing you've ever seen. And he was saying, he was like, he goes, there's a lot of things about being successful that you just get used to and start taking for granted. And you're kind of like, you get a nice house, but pretty soon it just becomes your house, And he was like, you never drive one of these and don't just feel like this is awesome. This is really awesome to have. And so I could see where that that's like a dangerous thing. Like I remember I think we talked about this, but Lewis at one point, this is like a couple of years ago. I don't know. It was one of Lewis's ideas. He's always got a million ideas, but he was like, we should get Rolexes. Like me, him, and Jay, we should all get like nice Rolexes. We're making a few bucks now. Like, let's do it. And I remember in my mind just being like, I'm not a watch guy. Never been a watch guy. I could not care less about having a Rolex. Like, this is not my thing. Having a nice watch has never been my thing. I don't really give a shit about like. I kind of feel like in a way it's almost it's like a way to signal to other people that you're somebody. And I always kind of felt like I'd just rather signal that in other ways. I don't need to signal that with my watch, and I don't particularly care about it. But then there's also just a part of me that's like, the last thing I want to do is get a Rolex and find out that I really like having nice watches. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and now this is the thing. Now it's like, I got to spend money on watches because I put it on and I'm like, this is the goddamn greatest feeling in the world, which is possible. I don't know. I've never worn a nice watch. It is possible that I put it on and go out and go, I've just never felt so great as that night when I went out with my $20,000 watch. Now I have to be in the game of getting $20,000 watches. Now my kids can't go to college. Sure. They end up not being indoctrinated in those feminist gas chambers. But still, I think the point is that it's a dangerous road to go down. So anyway, my friend, you're going down that path here, getting a nice car. It's no good.
Typically, I like to save my money and then have the government just slowly rob it through inflation. That's typically what I like to do with it. Or just overspend on 7-Eleven beverages and not be nervous about the expense because there's no other expenses in my life. So the fact that I'm buying the fancy iced coffee and beers for the room that might or may not get consumed. I like that level of like not having to sweat money is being able to buy 7-Eleven beverages without thinking twice.
Well, it is the ultimate, especially it's the ultimate advantage of being a single guy.
Yeah, it's 7-Eleven beverages
you
without
can be
sweating
happy,
it.
but you can be happy with that.
Yeah.
And like not actually be searching for anything. It's like, no, that's fine. I got the thing that I like and it's reasonably priced. It's not until family comes in that you're like, all right.
Then you gotta go back to the $3.19 for pretzels. Do I really need these pretzels right now?
Yeah, and it turns out you do. Turns out you do need those pretzels. All right, well, we got there's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about here on our first episode of the week. And so why don't we? First off, I want to do this first because I just thought this was such an amazing little moment. It was on Bill Maher's show, which I've always said Bill Maher is equally parts entertaining and frustrating and all of these things, but he always holds a special place in my heart for whatever the influence he had on me. But there is one of the things that I do respect about Bill Maher is that on the issues where he's decent, he's got a backbone. And he won't just kind of roll over. Like, he doesn't do that thing where he just falls in line. Now, don't get me wrong. He's under some spells, and those lead to gross errors. Like thinking that Kamala Harris was going to dominantly win and thinking that we'll never have elections again if Donald Trump gets back in, which it's interesting. I haven't heard much of an update from a lot of those people if they believe that we're currently living in a non-democracy or whatever. But man, when he's good and he's on it and won't back down, it's pretty enjoyable. So let's by the way, I just thought of another clip. I'm gonna send it to you now, Natalie. But let's play this the clip in the order I sent them to you. So not that one first. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Let's play it.
Scientific American, the magazine. I remember when it was around when I was
grew up with it. Yeah.
Grew up with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, their editor had to quit. You saw this.
Yeah, I heard about it because she expressed some opinions. Right. Yeah.
Okay, sure, but it sure didn't sound scientific.
Can you already pause it? It's just even here. Okay, so this is one of the biggest publications in the scientific world, and he's already you can see him squirming immediately. Why did she have to quit? Because she expressed some opinions. Well, is that really it? Because there's lots of opinions you could express and not have to quit. It's not just some opinions. It's a pretty wild one. But anyway, you could just already see how there's just not a desire to admit at all that maybe this, the science TM is just, it's like a given that they are to be trusted, and you are somehow backward if you have any issue with the scientific consensus. You know what I mean?
Sometimes when you got a debt to the mob, it's not just that they take your soul, but it's the indignity of having to sit there, pretend like you're an intellectual. I don't know what happened in the Me Too movement or with him that he went so woke and was willing to shill for the machine no matter what. But you can tell this hurts his soul.
Well, it does. Listen, it does seem like Neil deGrasse Tyson got Me Too'd, and ever since then has just been like, I'm not going to upset anyone with power. I am always going to be on their side. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's being blackmailed or something like that. I think there's a dynamic. And a very peculiar one, where when nerds get famous, and there's just something off, like when a real nerd, like think about Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is, by the way, it's very.
You ever seen him as like a high school wrestler or a college wrestler?
No,
he's not a nerd.
Was he cool?
You got to pull up if you can pull up a picture of Neil deGrasse Tyson.
No, was he really?
He's a shredded.
Well, this is about to blow my entire theory. Then I don't know. He's just a liar. Then he was at a Diddy party. I don't know.
Also, I'm somewhat racist, so it might have just been someone as a wrestler.
Dude, that's Daniel Cormier.
He actually looks like Cormier, if I have this right. I could be wrong though. I've been wrong on things before, but I don't think. I think he was more of a jock with some smarts. I mean,
wow, that is okay. I have not seen that picture.
Look at the package on him too.
All right, you know what? I take it back.
He's got a shaft haircut, the cool shades, and a big black hog to match.
All right, you know what? He was way cooler than I could have possibly imagined. Dude,
I've never been that cool in my whole life.
Me neither. How did that age into what we see before us today? Okay, sorry, that just completely threw me off. I was not expecting that.
But
Forget my nerd thing.
I didn't mean to derail your nerd theory.
No, it's just it's a weird thing that happens a lot where nerds get famous and they're almost like giddy with the fame, and then to be like publicly humiliated like that is like such a scary thing that they just want to avoid that. So anyway, the point is that it's not necessarily that there's like some conspiracy or some blackmail. He is, however, bending over backward to be on that side and not admit, obviously, when things are wrong. And it's bizarre in a way because he would actually do himself and even that side a much bigger favor if he would just go, like, just don't be so defensive about it and go, yeah, she said some crazy stuff. Anyway, let's keep playing.
Want to be running Scientific American.
Okay.
It was a rant on Twitter. Okay, I could read it to you. It's really ugly. I apologize to younger voters that my Gen X is so full of fucking fascists. Okay, I'm not.
Okay, I'm not a gasket right there.
I'm not for.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not for canceling anybody on either side.
Yeah.
So But here's what I think is the scandal.
What?
This is in Scientific American.
Yeah.
Less than a year ago. Inequity between male and female athletes is a result not of inherent biological differences between the sexes, but of biases in how they are treated in sports. That's nuts. And it sure ain't scientific, and it's in Scientific American. And that's why the Democrats lost the election. It's true.
Bill, every 20 minutes on your platform, you come up with another reason why the Democrats lost. No. You already have the answer. They lost the election. So anything you say
That's
is
not
why
true.
they did it.
First of all, you don't watch this show, so you don't know that. I know you don't, and it's okay. But you talk as if you do, and you fucking don't. And that's okay. Just don't bullshit me. That's the one thing people can't ever do on this show is bullshit me. And that's fine. But I don't say that. I have very good reasons. But engage with the idea here. What I'm asking is, Scientific American is saying, basically, that the reason why an WNBA team can't beat the Lakers is because of societal bias.
What you're saying is not Scientific American says that. An editor for Scientific American says that, who no longer has the job. So don't indict a 170-year-old magazine because somebody.
Okay, this is called Scientific American, and they're printing something
because someone enters the cesspool that is social media and then participates in that exchange. So
why can't you
let's talk about science.
Why can't you just say this is not scientific and Scientific American should do better?
Well, does she still have her job?
No, not because of this. I said the scandal is not her tweet.
Because that was like a year ago, was it? Which one was a year ago?
I think a year ago, women still couldn't beat men in basketball or any other sport. And it wasn't because of society. You don't see a problem
By the way,
here?
long-distance swimming, women might actually have the advantage. You can look into that. Yeah.
Maybe long-distance swimming.
All right,
yes.
let's
Okay.
pause it. I mean, you can just see the squirming is just so uncomfortable. I mean, if you just think for a second about, listen, Bill Maher's point. Okay, listen, him saying this is why the Democrats lost, I do think is a little like, okay, there's lots of factors to why the Democrats lost, and it's not exclusively this. But he's clearly touching on something that's very real. And look, Neil deGrasse Tyson's attempts to evade this are pathetic. I mean, he's saying, oh, this woman, well, does she work there anymore? It's like, no, but she doesn't work there anymore because she went on some unhinged, like Twitter or whatever social media post about how everybody who's, in the country are fascists or something. But the point Bill Maher's making is like, yeah, but a year ago, the fact that that can such a clearly anti-scientific statement, but one that serves a certain ideology can get published in one of the leading scientific journals in the country. How do you not look at that and go like, yo, that's a major problem? And the reason why I appreciate Bill Maher bringing this up is because that actually, I'm not saying it's the reason the Democrats lost, but it goes to the heart of like what a lot of problems with the trust the science people is that, well, no, okay, it's not just science. You mix this poisonous ideology with science, and this ideology, let's call it progressivism, it's not just that, it's that the ideology demands that if the ideology is in conflict with science, even in the most obvious way, like the most obvious way, nobody, again, this is like a lot of these issues, nobody actually believes that the reason why LeBron James is a better basketball player than insert WNBA athlete here is because of the way society treats boys and girls. Like that, if you don't think that's a biological reality, then you're throwing biology, which last I checked was a branch of science, out the window. You're saying there's no such thing as biology. Like, okay, that's an insane anti-scientific argument. But the fact that that could get printed and that didn't like set off alarm bells. Like that at this scientific journal, an editor could be making the argument that biology isn't real. And that is like, I mean, listen, I'm just saying, scientifically speaking, it's on the level of saying that male deer have antlers because they feel that way. It's because they feel like having antlers. You know, it's not like predetermined in their genetic makeup that they have antlers. It is something that, well, it's because society expects male deer to have antlers, and so this pressure is put on them, and if we just were to expect the females to have them, they would also have them. It's on that level scientifically to say that, like, and believe me, someone who's got a little girl and a little boy, there are differences. Now, by the way, you can acknowledge that and still think that women's sports are important and ought to be promoted. You can even defend things that I don't necessarily believe in, but you could defend that the NBA should be subsidizing the WNBA. You can have whatever arguments you want, but this is the essence of like why people don't just trust the science and why people shouldn't just trust the science is that you guys are so possessed by ideology that you will not only ignore scientific information, but straight up lie about what the science says. And you see this through COVID. You see this with climate change. Now, I know Bill Maher is not going to make that connection, although he will probably make the COVID one. But it's like right there. And then Mr. Scientist guy is reduced to having nothing except these very cheap attempts to like spin it back on Bill Maher. It's just like totally embarrassing. I don't know. Your thoughts?
You'd think the science guy could do better than just linguistic tricks.
Right. Which is essentially all he has is like, well, what are you doing now? And you know, it's like, it's interesting to see this because I think it's all, you know, it's part of a bigger theme, which is people like Bill Maher, who was predicting that Donald Trump is over, you know, just a few weeks ago. It's them trying to reckon with what just happened. And so, okay, yeah, is he a little over the top when he says that's why Democrats lost? Yeah, there's many other reasons why as well. But you do see it's like, yeah, I don't know. We had what would you call it? A scientific emergency in the country for a few years that upended the way everybody lived, and the science was wrong about all of it. And so now, maybe if ever there was an appropriate time, now would be the time to like, let's take a look at this scientific community. What exactly is it that they're saying here? Oh, you're saying really blatantly anti-scientific things. Look at that.
I think Bill Maher is almost saying, hey, us all pledging allegiance to a lie just cost us an election. It's not working anymore. And Neil's still trying to play by the old rules, which is, hey, we're all just supposed to pledge allegiance to this thing. And I think we're coming to the end of this whole woke thing. And I think we're coming to the end of people liking, it's like kind of what happened with the Washington Post, that 10% of the subscribers left over them not endorsing Kamala Harris because they still feel like, no, we're just supposed to portray an illusion. We're all going to commit to the illusion. And that's the game that we're playing. And I think we're headed for a media landscape now where people are going to demand a little bit more honesty after they got as much wrong as they have.
Well, I hope you're right. Because that would really be fantastic. We could use a little bit of that transition.
It's almost what we've seen 100 times, where if the news anchor just tries to press a question twice, how much it changes the dynamic of an interview, and their ability to do so if they want to press you on something, and the way that they'll handle Democrats versus Republicans.
Yeah.
But Neil's, for all of his intelligence, he's really not ready to engage in honest conversations with anybody because he doesn't want to actually explain his positions because some of them are nutty.
Yeah, and like I do think there is, it's almost like, look, there are these two forces in life, and they're very yin and yang. In many ways, they're like the male and the female. And I don't say that to mean that like all men are like this and all women are like this, but there is something to the fact that like, okay, there's like logic and there's emotion. And I don't think either of those are unimportant. And I'd say one of the lessons that I've learned from being married, and I think this took me a while, but it is something that made me a better person, was kind of because generally speaking, again, obviously I'm speaking in generalities here, that men tend to be more logical and women tend to be more emotional. And I think one of the things that's very tough for men to understand is that emotion is valid too. And like, there's nothing wrong. Like, it's important how people that you care about feel. Like, that matters. And we're also emotional creatures. It's not like we're not. We're just, a little more skewed to logic. But there's something where, like, if you're ever in an argument with your girl and you're like, hey, logically, I'm right. Think about it like this. I have a logical point here. And she's like, okay, I'm hurt by that. You didn't win. Like, if you're making your chick upset, that's not a win for you. That's a loss. You know what I mean? And like, if she's feeling upset, then like, you actually do need to value that and deal with that. And okay, you have a logical argument, but like, whatever. Like, that's it. All I'm saying is there are things that it's like, that might be true, but you'd be a dick to say it. And so like, maybe don't say it. Okay. Like, there is an area for that in life. The problem is that progressivism so leans into the emotion and like, how does this make me feel, that you will straight up deny reality. Like, just deny reality. I remember getting in arguments with people like 15 years ago, and like at comedy clubs and shit, like just arguing with other comics and stuff. And like, I remember there would be these like slogans that progressives would have. And I remember one of them, which I don't know, have you ever heard this before? But someone said it to me. I remember getting in this argument with them, and they said, race is a social construct. And I was like, where did you even get that from? And it was from I think a sociology class. And they said, so, yeah, well, that's the argument, is that race is a social construct. And I was like, what? That's the most retarded thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, again, I'm not like trying to be a dick. You don't have to take that. I'm not like saying, oh, you should hate a group of people based on their race or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, you do understand. And I remember sitting there was this guy, Jay, who was with us, who was a black dude, used to work at Eastville Comedy Club. And I was like, so what is it that you're saying? Are you saying that Jay's skin is black and my skin is white because what? Society? What, did people tell him he was black and then he like developed different pigments in his skin? Like, what are you saying? I was like, no, it's biology. It's we evolved in different continents and evolved differently. Now, I can understand where there are people who don't really want to have that conversation, and they don't really want to go down because, oh, what are the implications of that? You know, like, what ways are we different in? Does this, okay, fine. You don't want to go down there, and maybe it's better for society to not even have that conversation. There is such a thing as real conversations that maybe aren't the best to have, that some things are better left unsaid or something like that. Fine. But don't lie to me. Don't start it by going, hey, race is a social construct, because I'm not an idiot. And like, no, it fucking isn't. So just don't, that's all I'm saying is don't start. If you're going to claim to be the science TM, and there's a topic you don't want to talk about, I'm even okay with that. But don't lie. Don't bring up that topic and like gaslight people to say, oh, no. In fact, here, let me take on why the NBA players are better than WNBA players, okay? And here's the answer. Because you're sexist. Society. Like, that's just so fucking ridiculous. It's crazy that any adult would ever say that out loud. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Proton VPN. Proton created Proton VPN to further protect the journalists, activists, and everyday citizens who use Proton Mail. Proton VPN breaks down the barriers of internet censorship, allowing you to access restricted online content. Proton Secure VPN sends your internet traffic through an encrypted VPN tunnel to keep your browsing data safe, even over public or untrusted internet connections. As a Swiss VPN provider, Proton does not log user activity or share data with third parties. Their anonymous VPN service keeps your browsing history private and enables an internet without surveillance. Proton VPN is available on all of your devices, including PCs, Macs, smartphones, and even routers. A secure internet connection you can trust is essential to maintaining your privacy on your laptop at home, your mobile device on the road, or your workstation at the office. And right now, you can get an exclusive and limited time time offer by going to protonvpn.com/Dave Smith. Once again, this is a limited time offer, so go check it out today. protonvpn.com/Dave Smith. All right, let's get back into the show. Doesn't work for me. Would you turn the dial on that just down a little bit, Rob? Just like, yeah, to the middle. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. All right. Any thoughts, Rob, or you want to move on to the
Let's move
the next
on.
clip?
Let's see the next clip.
All right. Here's the next clip, because the way Bill Maher does it on his show is he does an opening interview with you, and then he brings that guy back onto the panel at the end. So that was how they ended the interview, and then here's Neil deGrasse Tyson.
This was the clip that I saw, and the way he starts just spazzing at
great.
the end of this to try and get his nonsense in before the commercial break. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So that means we're incapable as a species of truly understanding risk. And this goes to like vaccines, okay? I don't want to like poke the bear here, but what I'm saying is,
The bear believes in vaccines, just being skeptical of all medical interventions, as everyone should.
well, except 99 out of 100 medical interventions, you're not saying, I need a second opinion. If you have tuberculosis, you don't need a second opinion. If you have polyps in your colon...
It's not close to 99%.
It's easily 99%.
It is not.
If you break a femur, you don't get a second opinion on that.
I agree, but that's not most things that happen to people. Lots of things that happen to people, and I'm thrilled that you don't ever have this happen in your life, and I hope you never do. But trust me, most people at a certain point in their life will need a second opinion.
The second opinion, yes, but that's after you've been through 99 other. I'm trying to put credit back to doctors, where our life expectancy is 3 times what it was 150 years ago. And everyone before 150 years ago
but lower than the rest
organic. And half of them died before they were 35. Yeah, science matters.
Of course it does.
But sometimes you don't sound that way. That's what worries me.
Well, actually, you're the guy. You're the guy who doesn't understand why the NBA team can't beat the Lakers. So I don't know. You're supposed to be the scientist, and you couldn't even admit that. And as far as medicine goes, I could talk to you this about all day. But again, we do have a party to get to. This is not your field. You're not a doctor.
No, but I'm a scientist. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's not a doctor.
No, hold on.
That's not a doctor.
I'm a scientist. You know what? Probability and statistics.
When I get a goiter on Uranus, I'll call you.
No, don't call me. But when it's time to assess risk, that's something that comes out of the world of probability and statistics, and scientists are trained in that. And so there's a documentary on PBS.org right now that talks about what it means to accept a risk, or to, like in a vaccine. If you don't want to get a vaccine, that's like walking around with a baseball bat, fine. But if you hit someone with it, that's bad. There's a social contract to not infect other people.
He's into the science moment. I'm ready to drink wine.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Look, it is pretty funny, and I gotta say, I thought Bill Maher did a great job with that. And there is something really funny about dealing with this argument, which again is a logical fallacy. This is what we talked about in the Sam Harris episode, responding to him. That just kind of this appeal to credentialism and appeal to authority. And one of the things that's funny about it is how selectively they apply it. So like, you know, like the same exact people who would be saying Joe Rogan's not a doctor through COVID, like the exact same guy, sometimes in the same hour would go, Joe Rogan's not a doctor. Let's bring on our next guest, Bill Gates. And Bill Gates, the guy who made Windows, is now. But if he's on the side of the regime, then we don't really mess with that. But if he's not on the side of the regime, then it's a real issue that he's not a doctor. Likewise, there's a weird thing where, like, you know, like, you're not a doctor. You're an astrophysicist. And then he's kind of like, well, but I understand statistics. It's like, you're not a statistician. You're not, like, what? Why is it that you you have to have a degree, but it doesn't even matter if your degree is in the topic that we're talking about at all. So right away, even though it was a fallacy to begin with, it's like, oh, you guys don't even really apply this equally. But if you just take a moment, just think again about how, for the guy who comes on as he's the science guy, he's the high IQ guy, which is essentially what we're talking about when we talk about astrophysics, is that you're like, okay, you're going to explain some shit to me that I'm barely smart enough to comprehend, and like I guess I'm trusting that your brain can stretch further than mine, because when you start talking about black holes and billions of galaxies and stuff, I'm getting pretty lost, but I guess you understand this, so dumb it down and explain it to me. But then that guy comes on and he is making, I don't really have better words to describe this, but just like a profoundly stupid and dishonest argument. The thing he's saying about, his argument was 99% of the time you don't need a second opinion. And Bill Maher was like, most of us have been through something in life where we needed a second opinion. And he goes, yeah, but that was after 99 things where you didn't need a second opinion. First of all, I do not think those numbers are accurate. I think he's just pulling that out of his ass. What, 99 different I don't think I've been to a doctor 99 times in my life. And I've needed a second opinion on things before. And then again, the point, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, Rob, but the point of saying like, hey, we used to have half the life expectancy we have now, and people ate organic food. Like, this is just a basic like correlation versus causation thing. Is he arguing against organic food? Is he arguing that the fact that we have over-processed food in this country doesn't have negative health outcomes? Do we not have an obesity epidemic? Do we not yes, it is true, and I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but it is true. I know this much. A huge part of the reason why we had life expectancy that was half of what it is today is because so many babies died. And I don't know what percentage it is exactly, but I know it's a huge percentage of this is just antibiotics. Infections used to kill people all the time. And we figured out with pretty good effectiveness how to deal with infections. Now, there are problems associated with antibiotics, but there's no question that there are things that would have killed people that today just don't kill people. I remember, I may have mentioned this on the show before, but I remember when I was, I think it was 19, whatever, a real fucked up infection in my tonsil, and it was gross. Had to have like surgery on it and open it up and stuff. It was gross. But I just remember the ENT telling me, this just really stuck in my head at 19 years old, that he was like, oh, this is what George Washington died of.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, George Washington. They couldn't even save that guy. One of the most powerful people in the world at the time. Maybe not the most powerful, but a pretty goddamn powerful guy. And they, just with all the resources of society, they're like, I don't know, you got an abscess in your tonsil, you're going to die. And so, yes, there's a lot of things like that. I suppose I would have been a number of, dying before 20. And now I'm not, because we have amoxicillin or whatever the hell they put me on. Okay, that really has nothing to do with this conversation, right? So even invoking that is just being dishonest and distracting from the issue, because the real question here is like, yes, again, he uses examples like if you crack your feet. Yes, if you break a bone, I think, I don't think either of us would even kind of disagree that we pretty much trust Western medicine on that. If you need surgery because you cracked a bone, they kind of know how to put that bone back together. They'll do a reasonably good job of that. I would not go and like, if I went to my doctor and he was like, you fractured your forearm, you need surgery or whatever. I don't think I'd be like, I'm going to need a second opinion on that.
I would all day.
Would you? Maybe.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's the right move.
Give me those x-rays. We're calling Dr. Krim.
But I'm reminded of a story that Tom Woods shared in his newsletter, which this to me, I think, sums it all up. And this is how a lot of people feel about modern medicine today, is that, so Tom Woods, as you guys know, is a brilliant guy, and he's like I say, he's got degrees from Harvard and Columbia, so I guess he gets to have an opinion. But he wrote Diary of a Psychosis, a phenomenal book about the COVID years, which you really, really should get if you haven't already. But so he was much like us, I think. Tom was never really a guy where vaccines were one of his interests. That wasn't really something he had done deep reading and thinking about. But during COVID, paid very much attention to this vaccine because that was a pretty big deal in America at the time and in the world. And he told this story about how he went to the doctor. This was earlier in the year. And the doctor was like, Tom's, I want to say in his late 40s or early 50s. And I guess his doctor said to him, he was like, oh, you're at your age now, you can get the shingles vaccine. Because, blah, blah, blah. If you've had chicken pox or whatever, you can get shingles. And he goes, it's 85% effective against shingles. And Tom goes, any other time in my life, I just would have went, okay. The doctor's telling me I should get this thing. And I don't understand it. And he knows it. He's the guy in the white coat, right? So I'll take. But he goes, but after having written a book about the COVID vaccine, he's like, well, what does that mean, 85%? Because I know how you guys cooked the books for this other one, and it's the same goddamn companies that are selling this one. So now I got to go home and research this because I'm not just going to trust you. Now I got to go talk to my doctor expert friends. Now I got to do, and that's where a lot of us are at this point. We don't really trust you guys anymore because we've seen the way you operate. It's kind of that simple. I don't know. Any thoughts on any of this stuff?
I gotta work on my hand motions. Yeah,
oh my God, it was so herky jerky, wasn't it?
And then whatever he was trying to pivot to, I think he's. I'll give him. I think he's trying to pivot to, hey, we need to be trusting the experts, and there's dangers here of that people aren't going to be unvaccinated. But in the post-COVID era and the way that he was pitching that vaccine, I think he lost credibility on that topic also. And as to what the hell is far-fetched example of baseball bats and walking around swinging them at people, I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, something about how it's like their old thing. Where it's like, well, you have the freedom to not take the vaccine for yourself, but since other people are involved, you lose that freedom which again is just, it's a very weak argument. And it's just like, okay, so then by that, like, what are you going to extend that to? I mean, anybody could have a cold at any time and not have symptoms yet. So is it going to, you're justifying completely eliminating any ounce of liberty at all. Because you theoretically could be getting someone else sick. And by the way, this was their whole justification for all of the mandates for the vaccine. Because they were saying if you get it, you can't transmit it, which was a lie.
Or if they started chipping our brains, you could say, hey, there's a social contract that everyone needs to have the chip in their brains so that government can monitor your inner thoughts because at any opportunity in time, someone could go violence. And so there's a social contract that we all need to have the chips in our brains. But who made that decision? Because one guy decided, hey, he likes the ideas of everyone having chips in their brain. I didn't sign on. So it's like, I guess it's the appeal to authority of the government's mandating you're supposed to get all these vaccines. I didn't decide on that. I didn't research it. I don't know what the vaccines are. But now, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, you're not allowed to be in public unless you've had all them because, and firstly, if everyone else was vaccinated, what it's like if you're wearing protective armor from baseball bats, why aren't I allowed to walk around with my baseball bat?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's logically completely invalid. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is My Patriot Supply. A lot of people are feeling pretty good about where our country's headed now, but that's only been over the last few weeks. I'll tell you, I'm still concerned after the instability of the last few years. Who knows what the future is going to hold? But I feel a little bit better knowing that I'm taken care of by My Patriot Supply. If there is a big emergency, food kits, solar power generators, water treatment systems, that's what you're going to need. And right now, you can get their 4-week emergency food kit for $50 off. Their 4-week emergency food kit includes some of my favorite meals, creamy Alfredo pasta, snacks like sweet banana chips. With warehouses located across America, My Patriot Supply can send your 4-week emergency food kit in as little as 1 day. Go to preparewithsmith.com to get your 4-week emergency food kit now. But don't wait. Emergencies emergencies can happen anytime. So go check out my website, preparewithsmith.com, to get those 4-week emergency food kits now. All right, let's get back into the show. There is something about like this, because essentially what they're asking you to do is turn your brain off. It's just like, just turn your brain off and trust us. And it's like, well, after you just spectacularly failed. And then not just that, but like after Bill Maher brings up the example of this failure where like scientists are claiming that the reason men are better at sports is because of prejudice or society. And you can't even just go, yeah, that's ridiculous. It never should have been published. As simple as that. I mean, if Neil deGrasse Tyson had just said, that's ridiculous and it certainly shouldn't have been published. But hey, look, they do a lot of other great work or something like, okay, there's a reasonable response.
I guess the real issue is that women are so stupid that they believe society when they tell them they're just not good enough at sports.
Yeah, you really, ladies, you gotta stop. Ladies, I tell my wife every day,
Yeah.
I go, listen, idiot, you can 360 dunk. You can do it. Just go do it. She tries, doesn't get off the ground at all, doesn't work. And I'm like, why are you listening to society?
It's all these dumb
Tell you
bitches
that
just
you can't.
absorbing what society's telling them. That's the real problem here.
This is really something. I mean, just imagine that argument could actually be made. All right, hold on. What's going on? This is too crazy. Oh, sorry. Are we having some problems with the stream? Gigabyte internets. All right. Well, those are certainly words. All right. I do apologize, guys. I don't know. I don't really understand any of this stuff. All right. Sorry if we're having some issues with the live stream. They've been going off without an issue recently, so that certainly is a shame. We'll make sure I'll get on the phone with the guys and we try to correct this afterward. Okay. So I wanted to talk about this, actually. I forgot about this in show prep, but then I remembered as we were doing that last segment. But there was, within this theme of like postmortems of the election, there was did you see Brian Stelter? I'm sorry, not Brian Stelter. Brian Williams on
I saw it. I didn't watch the clip, but I saw the clip making the rounds.
Yeah, okay, so this is I want to play this and break it down because I gotta say it was
Hey, having your life threatened in a helicopter can bring clarity to a man.
That's right. Listen, and I think I would say that there's, even if it didn't really happen, sometimes even just a near-death experience that you made up can still have a real effect on a person. Listen, obviously, Brian Williams is a disgraced liar. It's kind of insane that he's even still around at all. I know certainly he got demoted pretty heavy and would never return to being Brian Williams again. But it is pretty crazy that like that he ever went back to NBC News at all was kind of nuts. I mean, for people who don't know the story, Brian Williams was the NBC News anchor. When we were younger, he was kind of really one of the biggest, if not the biggest guys in news. Again, this was not an MSNBC anchor. This was the NBC nightly news anchor. He was also just incredibly talented. He's a propagandist. He wasn't like a real journalist, but he was incredibly talented, very funny in interviews, like just very good, very charming and charismatic. And he got caught just lying, which really you would think would be the cardinal sin for a journalist. It's kind of like working at a daycare and touching one of the kids. It's like the biggest thing you're not like, you're in the business of not doing this. That's the entire sell and the entire sell of being the news guy is that you're not lying. You're telling the truth. And not only did he get caught lying, but he got caught. You know how like there are lies that are worse than other lies. And sometimes, like if you, if you're in trouble for something and so you lie about it, that's not okay. It's not right to lie. But at least you can kind of understand where it's like, oh, they lied for this reason, because I'd be upset with them if they told me the truth, and so they lied. And that's kind of different than someone like, you ever catch someone, you ever just known a liar in your life, like a pathological liar, and they just lie for no reason? You know what I'm talking about? Like, you just lie about something, you're like, but why would you even lie about that? And there's something more disturbing about that lie than the lie where you understand why they were lying. And then what Brian Williams did was lie just to make himself seem cool. He kind of gave this whole story about what was it? It was on a helicopter and they got shot at, and there was this whole thing, and it turned out none of it was true. And he was just lying to kind of look like a badass. And there's something about that sin that's so unforgivable for newsman, because the whole thing is that, like, you're not supposed to be there. It's not supposed to be about you. The idea of journalism is that it should never be about you. It's always about the news that you're covering. And you're just kind of a vessel to get this truth to people. And then it's on them to make up their mind with it. That's in theory what the job's supposed to be. So when you do that, it's the fact that they would ever have him back is like wild. But, that's the least of what's wild about corporate media. Anyway, all of that being said, he is a very smart guy, and he's an old school news business guy. And so there's something interesting there where you kind of know they are the ones, a lot of them, him, Chris Matthews, a lot of them have this tendency to not be caught up in the latest thing, because they still think of the glory days as being like the 90s or something like that. So like they don't think of 2017 as the glory days. And so when this loss happens, sometimes they're the ones who do within that world have a little bit more insight into like what actually went down here. Anyway, I did think this was really fascinating. So let's play this clip.
I think it's insulting when members of the working class, which the Democratic Party has lost entirely in our lifetimes, to insist the economy is doing great. A 12-pack of Bounty is $40. Rich folks don't feel that. Poor folks already switched to Sparkle during the COVID, during the lockdown. And I think telling them that the NASDAQ is gangbusters is further insulting. It's insulting. I think the biggest unforced error of the Biden administration by far was the border. To tell people it's not a problem is insulting. For the working class to see incoming migrants getting welcome bags, debit cards, and motel rooms is probably insulting as well. So there's a lot of work to do. It was when they handed out camo hats that said Harris Walls, and the Democrats they were kind of charmed by that. Their party has gone quinoa, and the rest of America's eating at Cracker Barrel. And so it was kind of an ironic use of something millions of Americans put on their heads to start their day every day. Yeah, they need to reach out to America again and be less about what's called suicidal empathy, worrying so much about minority groups in society and in your party that you win the argument, but you don't win the election.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know that he exactly gets it right there, because I don't think they won the argument and lost the election. I think they just lost all of it. But look, it's a weird feeling. I know you must have experienced some of this, Rob, right? And we've had a lot of this over the years. In our little rinky-dink operation that evidently can't even get a live stream going on my website. Sorry about that again, guys. We've just had a lot of moments, me and you, since we've been doing the show together, where we're saying something for a year, and then it makes it onto the corporate TV, and they're saying it like, whoa, no one ever thought of this before. And it's just kind of interesting, like, to even see Brian Williams saying this after the fact. It's like, yeah, but where was all of this a year ago? Because a lot of what he's saying there is the shit that we talk about every episode on the show. Like, that there's this enormous disconnect between these people on the TV who make $600,000 a year and the situation that your average working family is in, and that it's a slap in the face to the American people who are struggling to be giving all of these handouts to illegal immigrants who they don't want to be here in the first place. And just a lot of the stuff he's talking about, inflation and all of this. It is interesting to see them like, again, I'm not exaggerating. We've been talking about this for years. For years, we've been making these points. But it is interesting to at least hear somebody say that to them. Because how can you even deny that? How can you even deny that it's like, these people out here are trying to act like for a full year and a half, they were trying to sell you that the economy is great. I don't know what you're talking about. Imagine, how is that going to work? The economy's great? The economy's terrible. It's terrible. And everyone knows it. I mean, you just look at it like very simply put. Inflation is a tax, right? In effect, right? If your taxes went up by whatever your grocery bills are for the year, okay? Whatever they are for the year. If they go up 20%, or you got taxed whatever 20% of your groceries is, it's the same thing. In effect, it's the same thing for you. You got taxed. Okay, so the price of everything went up, and it's somewhere around 20%. I think it's actually more than that, but let's say 20%, just to okay. So that's a 20% tax that was leveled against the working class in America. You know what that is? You know how bad that is if your taxes go up 20%? Like, if I just found out right now that my taxes were going up 20%, I'd have to end this show to go have a conversation with my wife about changing what our plans were for this next year. And I'm doing pretty well. And that would really affect me if my taxes went up 20%. That happened to people making 50 grand a year. That's devastating. Devastating to be in that situation. And then when you're in that situation where the working class just got the biggest tax levied on them, you're going to turn around and say, no, dummy, the economy's great. As he said, look at the NASDAQ. Look at the S&P. Like, come on. Get the fuck out of here. But it's crazy that it had to take this type of loss for that truth to ever even get uttered on a television. Any thoughts?
I think the shame on you campaign is not going to work.
Yeah.
And the economy's great. Quit saying otherwise. You're just evil and mean if you don't like all these people coming over the border. It's exactly that Phillips commercial, which we've mentioned on the show before, of a man's a man, or whatever it is. Even what those dummies over at Jaguar tried last week. This doesn't work. No one likes being told that they're shame on you. No one likes that. So if you're going to keep preaching to working class people, hey, be more grateful, or no, what we need to do is create more fairness and take care of your girls, but they're also going to have to compete against men in their sports. But don't bring this up, because why are you bringing this up? This isn't a real problem. I mean, it's got to be the way that we want it to be, that the men can compete in the women's sports. But why do you keep bringing this up? It's not important to us. It's got to be the way we want it, but it's not important to us. The point I'm trying to make is you can't endlessly preach to people and just tell them shame on you. You got to win people's votes by pretending like you're going to represent them and you care about their interests. And so at least Donald Trump, and we've spoken about that before, even if he's just lying, at least he's willing to lie and go, I think you should be able to live a great life. Yeah. And I'm going to help you live a great life. And I care about you, the whereas everyone else was like, fuck you, you construction worker.
I had, there's also an element to the cultural component of all of it. And I always thought that Donald Trump has really benefited from that. And that Donald Trump has this thing where even though he's a billionaire, he's such a white trash billionaire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's just eating Mickey D's.
Yes. Literally down to the way he has his steak, to his fast food, to the way he talks, to the way he's a billionaire, but he's a billionaire the way the guy in a trailer park is like, that's what I'd do if I had $1 billion. I'd put my name in gold-plated letters on the side of my building.
I'll buy myself a sweet-ass piece of pussy from Russia, too.
I mean, it's literally like it is almost the fantasy of if you just handed $3 billion to some random guy in a trailer park, that's what he would end up being.
How much Melania's sister going for?
Well, that's right. And it ended up working to his favor. I remember there was this one time Gene Epstein, who's a brilliant economist, He runs the Soho Forum. By the way, if you guys are ever in the New York City area while they're having one of those debates, go check it out. It's a great debate series, always really fun topics. The SohoForum.org, I believe, is the website. But if you just Google the Soho Forum, you'll find it. But okay, so Gene Epstein, he's also an excellent debater. And so he was debating Bhaskar Sankara, I believe his name is, who's a democratic socialist. So it was a pretty standard, capitalism versus socialism debate. We've all seen a million of these debates before. I was at it. It was in New York City. It's 2017, 2018, something like that. And so he made this point. I remember talking about this on the show because it really stuck with me. And I've seen countless socialism versus libertarianism, capitalism, communism, all these type of debates. I never really heard anyone make exactly this argument before. And I was like, I really got to think about this for a while because there's something really profound about what Gene was saying. But so Gene was essentially, he was arguing that he was like, well, look, under a system of private ownership and laissez-faire, he was like, producers can do what they want and the will of the workers be damned, they can make what they want. And he goes, but in a democratic socialist society, you're going to be collectively, democratically making decisions about what gets produced. So he goes, let me just ask you, Bhaskar, which is funny to look at this lefty, college professor type guy. And he goes, so when it comes to the production of Qurans, do you think that a private owner should be, hey, if there's a market and people who want to buy Qurans, then they should be allowed to print Qurans and produce them? Or do they have to rely on a majority of the workers deciding that they want Qurans to be produced? And then he goes, how about birth control? If 55% of the workforce doesn't want birth control produced, does that mean women shouldn't have access to birth control? Or should a capitalist be able to produce it, the will of the workers be damned, and he can do whatever? And I was like, wow, that's a really brilliant point. And I had to think about it for a while. And I think kind of what Gene was getting at, or at least what I kind of took from it, was that there is this weird disconnect between the culture, that you kind of desire, and what exactly the majority will of the workers might be. And that's a real problem if you're a democratic socialist. You know what I mean? It's a real problem that you want to leave these decisions up to a vote, and yet you, and I mean, if you could look at this guy, he's like a short, skinny, college professor, kind of nerdy guy. And you're like, yeah, you're not exactly Mr. Working Class, are you? You probably don't. And by the way, I think this is a problem for woke progressives. I think, or neoliberal woke types. I think it's a problem for woke libertarians, where you just, and this is what made me think of this is when Brian Williams goes, the Democrats started eating quinoa while the rest of the country was eating Cracker Barrel. And it's a lot more than just that. It's the issue, if you watch my first comedy special, I had a huge chunk on the Trump grab him by the pussy comment. And one of the things that was interesting about that is it was one of these moments that just kind of, it was like a little glimpse into the cultural disconnect where, okay, yes, when you get on the TV news and everyone's in suits and ties and everyone's going, good evening and welcome to the 8 o'clock news hour, blah, blah, blah. Yes, in that environment, if you go, one of the political candidates said, grab him by the pussy, everyone goes, appalling, this is outrageous, and I've never heard people talk like this. And I'm saying, however, when you get into the world of real people,
we're grabbing bitches by the pussy.
It's what's happening out there. No, but listen, I'm saying the idea of knowing that a guy said some shit like this to other dudes, I think even most women they roll their eyes and go, yeah, men. You know what I mean? It's not that crazy to them that when guys just get alone and they're having locker room talk or whatever, they say shit like that. That's just, there's just a thing where and here essentially is the problem, right? Is that the people, especially at NBC News or whatever, they embraced this identitarian politics, this identitarian wokeism, specifically because they didn't want to actually give red meat to the left. They don't actually want to share banker profits with the working class. They don't actually want to have a redistribution of wealth from the wealthy to the working class. That's not. So they're like, okay, we won't do that, but we'll throw you these left-wing pet causes, transgender bathrooms. Sure, we'll give you that one. Diversity hires. Sure, we'll give you that. But the issue that they're up against is that, culturally speaking, there is a huge gap between these types of people who claim to care about the working class and the working class themselves. The working class themselves are not woke. They are the opposite of woke. They're like nothing even, again, where you find wokeism is going to be on a college campus, in a newsroom, at giant corporations, human resources departments. That's where you find wokeism. Go to a job site and tell me how much of it you find. And this is a major problem, particularly for democratic socialists and woke progressives, that you have these cultural values that are diametrically opposed to the working class who you're claiming to champion. And of course you're not going to reach those people like that. And then this stuff with the what was it, hard hats or whatever that Kamala Harris had people wearing. It's like, this is a costume to you. This is an avatar. None of this is real. But here's the thing, okay? The working class in America likes Miller Lite and McDonald's and Hooters and Trump. That's what they like. Feel however you feel about it, but that's what they like. And so you're sitting here talking about this, like all these cultural issues. It's just, quinoa's kind of a good way to put it. It's just, you're the privileged class. That's it. You're the privileged class and you're completely out of touch with the regular American people, which is not the worst thing in the world. You can be that and still connect to them. One of the fascinating examples of that is Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is absolutely in the privileged class, and he does not deny that, and no one who listens to him thinks otherwise. No one who listens to Tucker Carlson thinks, I think that guy grew up, the son of a trucker. No one thinks that. Everybody knows but he accepts that, he recognizes that, and so then he can be thoughtful and think about what is happening to people in the working class. This is something Tucker said to me when we were talking last. He said it in a better way than I could. But he goes, there's something. So his thing was that he said when the rich people really got fucked up, he said was in the 90s, when they stopped wearing suits and ties and started wearing t-shirts and jeans. Like the Steve Jobs thing. That whole thing, he goes, that's when they lost their responsibility. And I thought it was a brilliant point, because it's a little bit counter intuitive, because you kind of feel like, oh no, they're being more casual, they're being more real. But it's like, no, because you're denying what you really are. If you accept that you are a part of this privileged class, great. Then you can actually think about what responsibility comes along with that. And then you can think about what an effort you'd have to make in order to really understand the disconnect between someone, you and somebody who's living as the average American. But when you deny that and pretend that you're not in the privileged class and there is no disconnect between you and those people, that's when you get into real problems. And that's when you start projecting onto them that they have the same sensibilities you have, even when it's so obviously not the case. And I think that's a big part of what Brian Williams is getting at there, that the entire corporate media missed. Okay, we're going to wrap up there. I do apologize for the problems in the live stream. I will do my best to have that figured out for tomorrow. And anything you want to
check out the Run Your Mouth podcast. I'm not on the road as much. We're putting out 2 episodes a week. We've been pulling on... We've delved deep with as the meter turns on some stuff that's going on with the energy boom that we're somewhat predicting and how you might be able to front run it. Been doing a lot of jokes at the top of the show. Go check that out. And then my comedy special is still out there live from the Denver Comedy Garage. Got a 10X it. I wanted over 200,000 views. So go knock on your neighbor's door and force them to watch it.
There's probably an easier way to share it on the internet. But if you want to go door to door getting YouTube views, maybe text it to somebody, post it on your social media account. But yes, guys, if you can, go. If you haven't already, make sure to go watch Rob's comedy special. Share it with a friend. Post it on social media if you can. Like, comment, all that stuff really helps the algorithm. All right. Catch you guys tomorrow. We got Scott Horton on the show tomorrow talking about his new book, Provoked. There you go. Rob's got it right there.
So much book.
It is. Well, the thing is that I keep the guns upstairs, but if anyone breaks in and we're down here, we got Provoked right there to whack them over the head with. It's it's a weapon and a great book. Phenomenal book. You got to go get it. Okay, catch you guys next time. Peace.